All right, I think we can finally get started. Thank you so much for your patience, and Tony and Nelson did a wonderful job. I hope you got some sweet notes out of that. But I'm really, really happy to finally be here with my colleagues. Unfortunately, one of our team members is not present. That's Richard Scott, pretty critical to this team. But the team that I have here, people that I very much care about, I have Megan Enzo, Alicia Vieira, and David Lerman. And my name is Andrea Montiel Schumann. We are going to be discussing 3 years worth of research on augmented reality and how that makes sense for our communities. So I hope that you enjoy, and we're just going to jump back into it. I'd advise to keep the questions to the end. We have a lot of content to go through, but do ask all of the questions that you want. And after this session, happen to meet with whoever has further questions. Well, all right, let's get into it. So what the heck is looming? This is where I'm really hoping that this video actually works, but let's give it a shot. What you are seeing in your screen is not that wonderfully produced video, but I'm showing you that this is a handheld device. And what it does is that you can select a stop within the museum, and then you can follow directions. So this will be indoor wayfinding, so you have a bunch of blue dots. It gets you from where you are within our very complex museum institutions. And it can get you to a stop. So here one of my colleagues is walking through some galleries. You're seeing that it can see the corners and can take you in a way that is not going to make you triple. You won't be avoiding seeing anybody. So you can see people walking in front of you, meaning you probably are not going to be stumbling, which is a good thing. And here you are arriving to a room where we have a mummy. And this room is actually quite dark, so I hope that you can actually see in the screen. But the other mode not only can take you to different places, it can also help you get to know a little bit more about art and contextualize it in really interesting ways. So, for example, here in the mummy, we're using archival material from our conservation department, and in collaboration with them, we put together the X-ray overlay. Another thing that you can totally do with this device is not only you can go around the piece, and you will notice something. This is not necessarily like Pokemon Go, that the AR asset is just floating in the air. This one uses persistence technology. This is anchored within the space. So as you can see, people are going around. They're moving around, and the AR layer is staying with where it's supposed to stay. If you really like the AR mode, that's awesome, but you can also tap on Learn More, and you're going to get snippets of deep diving into some further content. This was actually a really fun collaboration with the conservation department because they had a great opportunity to offer some information from the science community that is often not shared within art institutions. So, all right. That's basically how it works. And I'm going to skip to the end. All right. Come on.
Maybe aim it that way.
I'm just going to do this. OK, we're back. We're good. So this has been an ongoing collaboration with our partners at Guidego. I don't know, David, do you want to learn or share a little bit more about how you are in collaboration with Google in itself, or you have been?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Andrea. Hi, everyone. So we started to work with Google and Tango in 2015, actually, and we were working previously with them on Google Glass. And they reached out to us, say, hey, we have a cool new device. Would you like to work with us? And we had that kind of good and bad experience with them on Google Glass. So we said, yes, but no. And they say, yeah, but you should have a look at that because it's an amazing tech. And so I remember walking through the Computer History Museum in Mountain View with one of the product manager with Tango, and he was showing me a wayfinding experience, kind of like the same that we have here with the DIA. And I was like, wow, how is it possible to have those blue dots, like kind of like magic appearing on the floor, you know? And you look around, you move, and it was the first time actually somebody, I mean a company, designed a hardware that was aware of the environment. So now maybe you have iPhone, Android, and you can play with some AR Core or AR Kit cool stuff. But back in 2015, AR was basically you look at a QR code and then you get a Yoda or a mini statue or something, but there were no persistent AR at the time. So we look at the Tango device, we were like, wow, we can do a lot of things in the museum space in terms of educational content. And that's where we reach out. I mean, we were in touch with Richard at the DIA, and we reach out to the DIA, say, hey, do you think we could do something with this technology? And they say, yeah, we have a project. And that's how it started.
And one of the things for those who are not fully familiar with persistence technology really is an extension to the capabilities of your device for it to understand its position within space. This brings wonderful opportunities. Well, let's talk about how we set up the project.
Okay. Do I need this? Yes. How does this work? Ah, there it goes. Okay, project background. So we, the DIA had a really interesting thing that happened where there was a private donor that gave us a nice chunk of money to create an app, and that was the direction. And so like that's like a nightmare, right? Like everybody who wants a museum to have an app, it was like, whoa, okay. So we explored different options. We had explored creating our own content management system so we could build our own tours in-house. We explored a few other options, and finally landed on AR, partly because of our connection with Guide2Go, but also because we, including Andrea, did a lot of research to figure out if AR was actually even a sustainable thing to experiment with. We decided it could be sustainable. We were going to take a chance and we were going to believe that it was sustainable and move forward. We went from there to start interpretive planning. So this is a little different than the DIA usually does it for interpretive planning. Usually when we start with, content, we shape, raw content into a relatable storyline. We think about the visitor experience. What do we want the visitor to think, feel, and do as they experience the works of art? How can we support that meaning making? And then you choose the appropriate tool based on that, right? Like, so you decide you want to share a certain piece of content, and then you look for the best way to share that. Here, we did it kind of backwards. We decided we were going to experiment with augmented reality in the museum. So we were trying to figure out ways to use that technology and find the content that technology could best convey. So we did a lot of exploring in our building. We have 65,000 square feet. We're huge. It's basically 3 buildings in one. We have the old building in the center that was built in 1927. We have a wing that was built in 1960, and then we have another wing that was built in the 70s. So it's, as you can imagine, it's like any large encyclopedic museum. It's like impossible to navigate, right? Well, it is possible, but it's really hard. It's like a big challenge that we've been facing for our whole existence. So one of the first things that came to mind, especially in conjunction with the wayfinding possibilities, was that this was an opportunity to take visitors into the dark and hidden corners in the museum. So you see here on the screen, oh, I didn't change the slide because I am looking at my computer. Sorry, okay, so how can we connect people to art, interpretive planning? Wayfinding. Okay, so on the one side here we have our Arts of the Islamic World, the darker gallery with the carpet, and then over on the other side we have Rivera Court, which is a very public, visible space, and then this is a very dark corner of the museum that doesn't necessarily see a ton of traffic. So we targeted this area just as an opportunity to take people to a part of the museum that's rarely visited. So that was the first thing we did, is we sort of cited out the places in the museum that that we could take people to, that would be new for them. And then we started to just wander the galleries and think about what could we do. So we wandered the whole building. We looked at different options. We were looking at empty spaces like this next to our mural and our Indigenous Americans galleries. And we were thinking, you could project an AR map on there. You could explore all these objects and then carry the objects back to the map and put them on the map. Like, we were really having like crazy ideas. And then here we have a shrine, a Shango shrine. It's a shrine meant to connect with the god Shango, and these are the poles, and we were thinking about a game experience where visitors could connect these poles to a photograph of the real shrine that these poles came from. So we were thinking about games, we were thinking about overlays, we were thinking about interactivity, and we were really trying to figure out how AR could do different things in the museum. This is an example of an idea that worked out very well and sort of set the interpretive planning in a really tight direction. So these two objects here, they're called kilgas, and a lot of, if you do manage to get back to this dark corner of the museum and you're in middle school, you look at that and you think it's a toilet, right? Like kids are like, I don't know what that is. It's not a toilet. It's actually a really important water filtration system that was used in the Middle East to purify and cool water. So we do have a picture of, so these little stands, as you can see here, there would be a jar on top of them, and the jar would be made of a porous material that would filter the water, and while it was filtering it, it would cool it. And so we do have a picture showing the kilga with a jar on top of it. You can see it up there on the label. But that really wasn't an effective way of communicating the purpose of the object. And so, David and the great animation team at Guide2Go worked with a bunch, primary source documents, images of the jars, which really don't exist anymore. They're made of porous material. They're very fragile, and sort of rebuilt a digital working kilga that shows up next to the actual kilga. And it explains it, show instead of tell, right? So you can see exactly what it's doing. It's filtering water, and there's even water drips, so you can hear it. And this was a moment where we were like, okay, AR is going to be really good for helping people see things that you can't see. And then also a good opportunity to show people how some of these objects actually work. So here we go, see it work. So then we started looking for other objects in the museum that used to be used. So right here we have a teeny tiny little Sumerian cylinder seal. In real life, it's about this big, it's about an inch big. We have a lot of them in our collection. And what they were used for is to sign packages and important documents, contracts, that sort of thing. So if you were somebody in the ancient Middle East, you would have your cylinder seal. And every time you had to sign an important document or leave your mark on something or approve something, this is what you would use to do it. So you would roll it across clay, which in ancient Middle East was basically your paper, right? So on display, you can see it's in this little case here. There's a ton of them. They're little tiny objects, and then the imprints from them are displayed next to them. But it's not as effective as seeing it in action. So let me... Andrea, can you play this? Okay. So this is how a cylinder seal works. We made it huge, too. And there it is. And then you can explore the rest of the seals, and you can see them up close and really, really appreciate these tiny, tiny detailed carvings that were part of everyday life thousands of years ago. Okay. Another opportunity, like with AR that you saw with the mummy, is that you can actually overlay animations directly onto objects. So this here, we have another object from our ancient Middle East galleries. This is a palace frieze that would have been seen on the walls of this fellow here. Where's the pointer? This guy, this fellow here, this king's palace. And, when most people think of ancient sculpture, they usually think of this, right? Gray, beige, white, the real natural carving materials. But in reality, if you would have seen this thousands of years ago, it would have been brightly colored. So we worked very closely with our curator to get colors that were reminiscent of the colors that they think that these looked like. And it's a really impactful, simple experience where you hold up the device and you tap OK, and then the colors show up. So it's a really great way to engage people with what what these objects were in their time. And then there's a lot of really great interactive opportunities for AR. So we came up with an opportunity to play a game. There's a couple games in the Lumen Tour. This one, it works really well. So this is the Mushushu dragon. Cute name, right? And he is part of the Gates of Babylon. So he's actually, I don't know why I gendered him as a he. It's a dragon. It probably has no gender. So anyways, sorry about that. And so this dragon is actually made up of 4 predators. So what we do is we ask users to try to connect the predators to the parts of the body. So it's made out of a rattlesnake, it's a scorpion, a lion, and a falcon, and you connect those. And then your reward is a full immersive experience of walking through the Ishtar Gate into ancient Babylon. And you can see here all the Mushushu dragons on here. So this is really a jewel in the experience. David's animation team is incredible, and this is just an opportunity for visitors to walk around this space that doesn't exist anymore. This gate is, at a museum, not in the Middle East. So this is a moment that this gate is placed back in its original context, and people in Detroit, Michigan can explore it. It's really great. All right, so after we tested all these different experiences, we were doing evaluation the whole time, and it went pretty well. I mean, we'll talk a little bit later about some of the challenges with the user experience, but in terms of the overall engagement, 9 out of 10 users said that it helped them engage with the art. 85% overall satisfaction. People were really happy with the content, found the content really engaging. And 88% of people said they learned something new. So we looked at those stats, and for a prototype, looked at that as a huge success and as a good signal to continue developing the project. So when we started, we had, 7 stops on the first floor. And then after this evaluation, and since the evaluation went so well, the Knight Foundation granted us some more money to further develop the project from to the second and third floors. The prototype for Lumen won a Gold Muse Award at AAM. So that was even more encouragement to move forward. Okay, what's next? Alicia.
Hello. Hi. I'm Alicia Viera. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to go a little bit deeper now into our evaluation and what we learned from visitors. So at this stage of the process, as Megan just mentioned, evaluation is part of DIA practices, so Lumen wasn't going to be any different. We needed to do user testing. We needed to hear from visitors to be able to move forward. And after the first iteration of Lumen happened, that was pretty much from January to April 2017, we started conducting user testing, and we have the luxury of, the DIA has a luxury of having an evaluation department. So we had an internal evaluator, Ashley Mirasol is her name, and she collected data from visitors so that we could learn from the feedback that she gathered. And as Megan just mentioned, it was, we were happy. It was fairly successful. There were some interesting findings, though, and some surprising things that we found. But overall, the first 7 stops that we tested, that was the first iteration of Lumen. It was all throughout the first floor of the museum. We have 3 floors at the DIA. That's what was tested at that point. And at the same time, we were already starting to develop new stops and thinking about how we were going to move forward. So, but the methods that were used by the evaluator, so pretty much, and this is something that we've been continuing using, some very short survey cards. I think it has like 3 questions on them that we collect close to the pickup location for the device. actually also did some follow-up through email with some of the visitors that, agreed to continue talking and tell us more, give us more feedback. So that happened with some of the visitors. And also she did observations and some short interviews with some visitors as she was walking around and following them and seeing how they were interacting. So as we move forward, like I said, we use the results of this initial evaluation to make more informed decisions, and we ended up remediating some of the content for the existing stops, and as we developed the new ones, that also, became a little bit different with time. Let me see. So, for example, some of the unfamiliar things, I mean, we could talk for many hours about what we've learned, but we've selected a few of the surprising aspects that we discovered through the evaluation. And first of all, we realized the device was heavy. We knew it, but you don't realize it until you have to be holding it for a while. So it wasn't until we saw visitors going through the entire experience, and this was only one floor of the museum, that we realized that, people put it down because, it has a handle, and it's still something that we needed to figure out as the technology evolves, how we were gonna move forward to make it a little lighter for them to experience Lumen. We also noticed that visitors were using, usual behaviors they would do on their own phones, like people are used to pinching and zooming on the screen. And this was not the way you would do, you would work with AR, because you are using the screen, but the object is an AR object in front of you. So you have to get closer to the object. You cannot zoom it on the screen. It's not on the screen. It's actually, an object, 3D visual object. So because AR objects are real objects, you physically have to move closer, and so it was not necessarily too intuitive for visitors, we realized, to do this. So the other thing was exploring their surroundings. Oh, I probably should have moved this. So the handheld, this is an example, by the way, that Megan showed you the video. This is an example of one of the places that people would see this virtual platform and try to zoom on the screen instead of getting closer to the object. And with time, people started adapting to, their own behavior, but you cannot expect for people to switch, the way they behave automatically. It's a type of a new behavior, pretty much. So, and then for the other example that I was going to show you right now, you saw how the Ishtar gate in the video, you saw that, well, in the picture, it was not a video. We use it as a reward for visitors to see in the context of the museum, as if they were walking through the gate. We push a little bit the boundary with some experiences, and this is one of them in which visitors had to look up and sometimes look behind to see certain things. So this is an example of an altarpiece that was actually a double-sided altarpiece, and it's an entirely, it's not an object, it's based on the object from the collection, but it is in the center of the room, so you have to look at the 3 paintings on one wall, turn around, and then you see this immense, altarpiece that you can actually walk around and see the back of it. So that was a lot for people to get, very quickly. So this is an example of how a very complex game that we had created for people to find the paintings on this altarpiece, and then also to see the back of it and walk around it, got kind of confusing, and we realized that gaming experience was too much. So based on the evaluation, and this was one of the places that we wanted to keep the surprise factor and the wow factor, which is definitely still there, but we had to simplify the gaming experience. And had less steps to it and make more clear instructions and not assume people are gonna look to places that there is really nothing physically in the museum, but just in the visual experience. So another thing that we did, that all of this is based on the results of the evaluation. Some of the solutions that we came up with was training people. So we said, okay, we're gonna add one new stop, and this is gonna be like a playroom, which ended up being really cool, because Guide Eagle did a beautiful work with this playroom, and which we created, and we replicated some of the actions that visitors were gonna have to go through when they get to the other stops, but with a visual object. And it proved to be successful, but it made the experience a little longer as well. So you have to also, it was one more stop. So it was an initial solution that has helped, definitely. We also realized we needed more written directions, but clear ones and short ones. So we had to simplify the content as well as adding some of the missing links to help people navigate the experience. But the playroom simplify also the rest of the experiences in anticipating what they were gonna go through. So these are some of the solutions that we tested. The other, let me see what else. So in terms of what I mentioned, when you have to look in unfamiliar places, like looking up or looking behind you, we added this, little blue arrows that you'll see in a video later that would also help people, point at the right place, because it wasn't intuitive in some cases to find what we needed them to see. So, and basically at this point we realized we do need to respect a little bit more the human behavior, like the natural behavior, and to be able to make it more of an effortless kind of experience and not make it a more exhausting experience. So as I mentioned, we stripped away some of the complexity of some of the stops that it was to gamify, basically, too much to do. And we also were more intentional in aligning the objects with the obvious sightlines in the museum as you go in the room, or so that is more, things will show up more in front of you, and you don't have to look too hard to find them, look around too hard. We also work some more on the content, like I said, but the careful in sizing and placing the digital objects was very important, so that people could appreciate the details, and we don't expect them to walk too far to get too close, and so we sort of find the middle point to help visitors, to make it more effortless for visitors. So, and I have this quick slide, although David's gonna talk a lot about technology, but at this point we also discovered that we still have some glitches that we needed to work on. So that was something that we definitely knew that had to be addressed. And some of them were related to occlusion and navigation issues, and David's gonna go in detail into that. And in moving forward, as I mentioned, as we were learning from the visitor feedback, we were also already adding several new stops to the tour, especially on the second floor, and later starting with the content for third. And so we ended up rewriting most of the interpreted content and a lot of the instructions, and sort of like taking a step back and on things that for us were already kind of like second nature, because we've been testing ourselves, but for visitors encountering for the first time, it was rather, too hard for them. So we needed to guide them a little bit more. And of course, continue addressing the technology issues that we have. So we would have loved to show you a lot of videos of a lot of other stuff that are pretty cool that we have, but we've selected one place on the second floor of the museum that we, at this point, started developing content for that was rather unique. Megan showed you a photo of the Rivera Court, and the Rivera Court, as you can see here, is as opposed to the other experiences that you will go to a place in the museum and you will interact with one object, you are interacting with an entire room full of panels around you that looks like this. So this was a totally unique object because it is an entire room, and you have to look up, behind, like you have to look everywhere. So as you can see here, we ended up, because of how big this space is and how much interesting content that actually AR could help visitors connect with, we ended up adding 3 stops in this room, in this Rivera Court. And the first stop was more of an immersive experience, and this is it. Basically, we're helping visitors visualize how the court looked before the murals were there. This is 27 murals around you, and the walls before were all blank. So we use archival material, and Guy did a beautiful work, as you can see, recreating the huge fountain that was in the center of this court. And you can hear the water dripping and the fountain. You can, you see the plants. So the architectural details were recreated, and you're basically immersed in this space that looks like the way it was in 20-something, before Rivera came to the DIA. So the other stop, you can imagine that developing this stop was a little bit different because, like I said, the other stops were about engaging with one object, usually in front of you. And it was a learning experience also to apply what we learned in that room to the other experiences that we were creating or remediating. So just to show you very quickly, the 2 other stops that we added to the Rivera Court, one of them, we take visitors through preparing the walls before the artist started painting. So, and you can see how AR is so good for this kind of content, because there's no way people can know the layers that are behind the paint if you don't take them through something like this. And basically, visitors can go through the steps to prepare, to become pretty much an assistant to the artist and prepare the walls with the plaster and all the layers that go through it, and then transfer the drawings until they see the full murals as they are now. So we do that with one of the walls. And also, as part of this experience on the Learn More, visitors can learn also who are the people represented in the murals, because many of them are many assistants that work with Diego Rivera, that people automatically assume one artist created this, but it was a bunch of people that had to mix the pigments, that had to prepare the walls, so many things so many jobs that happen. So we also highlight these invisible people and the names of these people and who they are, and as far as we can find information, and at the same time without overwhelming the visitor with too much. That's what we did for what we pretty much call the Rivera during experience, so during the construction of the murals. And then the Rivera after experience, which is after the murals, thank you, had already been created, explores some of the symbolism and the iconography of the murals. And this is one of our favorite experiences, in which we had an AR, a visual statue of Coatlicue that suddenly appears after visitors discover and click on the figure that's behind it. Diego Rivera was inspired in this Mesoamerican sculpture and goddess called Coatlicue, and we're pretty much bringing it to life so that people can compare how he modified the Coatlicue figure to create piece of machinery for the mural. So at the same time, we have Mesoamerican music playing. As you see the sculpture, you can walk around it. So in a big space like this, we could do something life size. So it was perfect for the space. So all of the learning that we did after coming up with these 3 stops and the rest that we did on the second floor help us move forward also with the remediation. And now David's gonna dive into more technology stuff.
So I'm going to take just 5 to 10 minutes to go through what is possible to do in AR in 2019. So we are at the end of the decade, 10 years already. And so there are a lot of things that we can do, and there are things that where AR can still make some progress. So AR has come a long way since 4 to 5 years. So in 2015, really Tango paved the way to these new AR capabilities. Once again, before it was mainly based on a QR code, on a marker to display something. And since Google created Tango, we had Apple that launched AR Kit in 2017, then Google launched AR Core, then Facebook, Snap, even Amazon, Microsoft with HoloLens. So all those huge companies invested billions of dollars in AR. So I would say that today, a designer, a developer, if they want to do something in AR, they will use maybe 15, 20, 30% of the capabilities that all those companies offer us. And because there are so many that it's hard to kind of use them all. So I want to run through the main features and to share with you what it's possible to do or not today. So the first things you need when you create AR experience is plane detection. This is a basic. You need to know where is the floor, where is the desk, where are the walls to position an object on the reality. So that I would say works really well, except in very dark environment. But it's kind of the same with the human eye. If I ask you to position a glass in a dark environment on a table, we might miss it actually. So dark is never good for AR, and also we need texturing. So this is perfect for AR. A lot of motifs, a lot of colors. This is not great for AR. But I would say it works in 95% of the time. So the second thing you need for AR, when we say AR, is persistent AR, like at the DIA. Typically, the mummy that you can see here has to be inside the sarcophagus. Otherwise, we defeat the purpose. If the skeleton is beside it, it won't work. So what we need to anchor object is a point cloud solution. So basically, something where the device knows where it is by capturing what they call feature points in the surrounding. So like a human eye, you know where you are because you know the door is here, you know the table is here, so you kind of know where you are in the surrounding. So we have several options for that. Apple has AR World Map, Google has Cloud Anchor, Microsoft has Azure Spatial Anchors, another couple of vendors have different solutions. But I would say that anchoring an object in 2019 is possible, and it works perfectly at a room scale or an object scale level. So it will work well here. We work well here. In a large venue like the DIA, we'll talk about it, but it's more challenging to have an always-on localization. That's the point. So then another feature that we need for AR is motion tracking, world tracking, and other type of tracking. So world tracking or motion tracking is what you see on the left, is when you move with your device, the rendering of the object adapts, which is what you need to feel like it's real, So that is something that works perfectly and without any new sensors. Tango, you needed an infrared sensor, you needed 2 cameras. Now with just a phone, a regular phone, it works. Face tracking, AR Kit, AR Core offers that option. So you can do cool things with face tracking. We might do something with the DIA at some point, I don't know, with Egyptian mask or whatever. Object tracking, image tracking works pretty well too. So this is a key challenge in AR. It's occlusion management. So you can see on those two pictures what we mean by occlusion. So if without people occlusion, you get this image on the left. With people occlusion management, you get the result on the right. This is what we want to get. So what happened with AR is a digital object always appear in front of the real world. So in this case, if somebody come across the device and the wall, you will have the impression on the left. If you have occlusion management on a device, then you will have the same vision, same impression as a human eye, you know. And this, when we started the project with the DIA, did not exist, and it's not implemented yet. So you have to think about the occlusion, and you have to think about where people could come between you and the actual experience. So there are ways to avoid that, but the good news in 2019, there have been a lot of progress in occlusion management. One company make a huge progress called 6D.ai, and they have real-time occlusion management, which is impressive. If I move the glass here, the device will track and will occlude this image, which is pretty impressive. Apple has launched human occlusion, so it works only, it's kind of AI, AR, so it works well with human, which is what you have the most in museum, normally speaking. And there will be a lot of progress too in 2020. So I would say occlusion was something really new in 2019, which did not existed before. Then you have a real-world effect. So typically these are great. They consume a lot of CPU power, but you can have light adaptation. So the AR experience will adapt to the darkness of the room. So it's not bright when the room is dark. So that's great. And there is also a reflection that can be handled now. That is amazing because what you see here, of course, the sphere is the digital object and the glass is the real one. And you can see the reflection in the digital object. And that is working only on AR kit, so Apple for the moment, but AR Core will, I guess, catch up soon. Almost the last point, so interaction, we talk about it with Andrea, Megan, and Alicia. So interaction, you can add almost any type of interaction in AR, so directly to the digital object or also with the physical world. That's why you need the device to understand the world, because then when you tap on a specific point, the device understands what action has to be triggered. The new thing too, I would say 2018, is that you can have a multi-user experience. So different users can see the same thing. So the example that you see often is kind of ping pong table or tennis table where several persons share the same AR experience. And last thing, so this is where I think AR, I think it's a reality, should make progress, is always on localization. So at the DIA, it works, I would say, 80% of the time, 80, 70. So 70?
70%?
Yeah, 70%.
Sorry,
let's say 60%. So that is the thing. So we had a lot of help from Google when we created this experience because we were, I think for the first time, they were really using Tango at that scale, and it's still one of the biggest venues using Tango. But believe it or not, since Google stopped Tango, deprecated Tango in 2017, there have not been any replacement yet for that technology. So we are 2 years after, and we are working with different vendors. Microsoft is one of them, other vendors, to try to find a replacement technology for Tango, and it's pretty hard, actually. So I'm sure we'll make it in 2020, but to have an always-on localization, so wherever you are in the museum, the device knows where you are, so it means that the device capture feature point all the time, in real time. So that is a challenge, you know. And so, and typically the challenge we have at the DIA, sometimes people just go at drink a coffee, and what do? They take their device and they put it like that, you know. So the device is looking at the table and trying to find a feature point, but there is no feature point. It's just a table. So it drained the battery, and then they stop drinking coffee, they go back, and then it doesn't work because the device is like totally messed up, you know. So that kind of detail that we have to think, it's the real life in the museum. People stop, people chat, people are waving their device, put in the pocket, you know, and that is the real enemy of AR, is the unplanned motion and movement of the visitors. So, and the photo on the right, it's taken from Google. So I think Google has something that you can experience today in some city in the US. It's AR in Google Maps. So they use VPS, Visual Positioning Service. So when you are using Google Maps, you can see AR panel to show you where to go in the space. And it's based on the same point cloud technology, but also Street View and AI intelligence. So a lot of companies are working in making possible the fact that the device know where it is at every moment in the space, indoor and outdoor. But this is a next frontier for AR. So that's pretty overview of what's possible today. So a lot of things are possible. It's always the same thing. It's now, what do you want to do with AR? Because it's just a tool, you know. It's a great tool, but at the end of the day, it's a tool to serve a purpose. So that's the most difficult thing to solve.
Thank you so much, David. Could I have the clicker wherever it is? For the next part, we are running completely out of time. So what we're going to go ahead and do is go through a really fast retrospect. So I'm going to ask my panelists. We're literally going to spend about 10 or 15 seconds between each slide. So we're going to do Ignite style. We have a lot of learnings to go through, and I want to make sure that I get at least a couple of questions. So there we go.
Okay, is it me?
This is Alicia.
Alicia.
Okay, well,
I'll be clicking
she'll
back.
do it.
I will be clicking away.
Great.
I'll take slides away from you.
teamwork. So evaluation, just a quick recap. Talk to people. If you don't have an evaluator, it's important to be on the floor. Talk to people, observe people, see how they are using the device and how they are experiencing your product. I
have to change, sorry, we're going to only spend 15 seconds.
Go ahead.
Oh, is it me? Okay.
Yes.
So your audience might not be who you expect. This was my favorite finding of the whole thing. So we had an average age of like 47 years old or something of users, which was really, really interesting. And the big takeaway from this was that age isn't really a barrier to tech. You know, I think older adults have such self-conscious feelings about technology and being able to use it. But inaccessible design is the problem.
AR can be absolutely exhausting, so do have this in mind and focus on simplifying the interface and listening to natural human behavior. You can do incredible experiences, but you need to be meaningful.
Also, less is more. Use AR for what AR is best for, not resist the temptation of using it for additional content if it's not a good fit for AR.
That's what all the curators wanted. They were like, oh my gosh, you can put a virtual book. No. Okay, oh, this is me. This is another favorite one. You might not need AR. It's just a fact. You might not need it. So one of the things about this project is that we tested a lot of options, and a lot of the options told us that we might not need it in this case. So, but this is particularly interesting in terms of photographs, because a lot of people might think, oh, well, if you have a photograph, you don't need to make a reproduction in augmented reality, but it works better.
But if you do join into an AR, you can have incredible experiences, but planning for sustainability is absolutely key. So focus on creating meaningful experiences that can be scalable, reusable, adaptable. Technology is changing, so adapt to that. David? Consider limitations. I'm just going to go through them. Consider the limitations of AR. So once again, be intentional using AR where the limitations of reality results in specific addressable visitor needs.
Okay, so so quickly on this one, yeah, it's there is still some limitation. We have been through them. It's a dark environment, not good. People crossing everywhere in the gallery, not good. So there is still limitation, but like kind of every technology actually. So considering the limitation right from the get-go, it's better.
And even despite those technical difficulties, go ahead, Andrea.
AR can absolutely build meaningful connections with art. I totally encourage you to experiment to see if this is something that can, once again, respond to a legitimate visitor need. But what is crucial here, and probably the biggest outcome from all of this, might be intentional at engaging your audiences to co-create. They will help you make it better. So what the heck's happening with Lumen right now? I have less than 1 minute to tell you, but the project has been a 3-year experiment so far. We've learned incredible data out of this. We've gotten to know how human behavior happens around augmented reality. It's been an absolute pleasure to collaborate with Guidigo. I think that we've been able to collaborate also in the learnings. There's some things we've learned from Guidigo, there's some things that Guidigo has learned from us, and we have evolved been together. So in the next steps, as we mentioned, there are some limitations with the current technology that we've been using, the specific persistence technology. We're adapting to it. We recognize that it might take a few months to get to where it's going to be a satisfactory, normal experience. For the meantime, we're reducing and focusing on reducing the moments of confusion, exhaustion, or all in all, dissatisfaction. So frustration, a way to do it was to reduce the amount of steps, to target the areas where we know the technology works best. And that has really helped improve the experience so far. So test around. Limitations in technology does not mean that your project needs to end. I hope that this has been a helpful conversation. We were able to write a chapter on this a few months back, so do check it out if you haven't heard about this. Humanizing the Digital is a publication that a number of the colleagues in MCN released in the past few months. While you can buy it in Amazon for a hard copy, you can also access it for free in the MCN website. So go in there. There's all kinds of essays that are definitely worth exploring. And if you want to get in touch with us, do keep our contact information. We are more than happy to continue developing these ideas, and we love talking about how augmented reality is changing the world in a good way when you are meaningful with it. So we are able to take, I don't know, I'm gonna say a few questions, but we do want to leave a couple minutes before so the next team can join in. Anybody has a question? Yes, and do project, please. That's a really excellent question, and we would have gotten into it. We had quite a bit of notes on each one of our findings, but I think that we learned that visitors were using it a little bit more different than we were expecting, but in a way, it was super helpful to take them from point A to point B. At the beginning of the project, the technology was a little bit different. It was a very unfamiliar behavior for the users. Now it's evolving, because once again, we're not dealing with the same type of users that we were a few years back. So I'd say, Megan, I know that you might want to talk a little bit about the realization of.
Yeah. So the wayfinding actually made people very aware of how much they were missing. And so, which was really interesting, because if you ask visitors in general, what they need, they'll be like, oh, I want a tour that takes me place to place to place. But once they get on a path and they're on a path, they start to realize everything else that's around them. So we didn't necessarily find that as a negative finding. We actually liked that this was an opportunity for visitors to focus, but also it allowed visitors to realize how much more there was at the museum.
Focuses on the visual, and I'm just curious if you're thinking about experimenting two reasons. One is that the device itself can often be a distraction that somebody gets so locked into, but also thinking about accessibility and inclusion that, at the expense of just visual.
Alicia, do you want to cover the Cosmos stop, which will be probably a good example of that, or David?
I can talk really briefly on the 3D and binaural audio experience. So basically it's super complicated to design. So you can place objects, you can place also 3D sources, 3D audio sources in the space, so having the sense. But we found that it was really difficult to design those experiences and to make our partner, the museum, aware of what's possible or not. And so there is a couple of projects we had to abandon because the result was not what we were expecting and what they are expecting, because it was really hard to imagine 6 different audio sources in a room, for example. So the technology is here, but I would say for us, at least the challenge is how you design it with 3D sound space experience.
One stop where it worked really well for the DIA is called the Cosmos stop. You can collect sounds related to an object because sounds were very important in correlation to that object. I'd say that it was effective in that. So they are definitely interesting ways to use it. And they're also for accessibility checkpoints in the future. There's some exciting experiments that are happening around aiding visually impaired to move around.
I'm interested to know what level of involvement the gallery staff had in training people.
It's so the device management and distribution to visitors has been a challenge. Our frontline staff, they're great, they're very patient, but they have been taking the brunt of technical difficulties, which has caused a lot of frustration around distributing the device. So that was one of the big reasons why we reduced the stops and tried to find places where localization wouldn't drop out, to not only improve the visitor experience, but to improve the experience of our staff. It's really embarrassing to have a visitor come back with a device that isn't working and then to give them another one, and then they come back and it isn't working, So it has been a process, and we're still working very closely with our frontline staff to keep moving this forward, and we have become much better at involving them in the planning for distribution. We've done surveys with them, we've done group chats with them, we've really collected their feedback to figure out how to make it a good experience for them too, so they can have fun.
And to add to that note, for the content creation, we have been absolutely engaging with the frontline staff, because at the end of the day, they're the people that are engaging. I don't know if that's where the question was in a little bit, but as a sidetrack, I did want to mention that. We could probably take one more question, and then we are done.
My apologies. Maybe you mentioned this at the beginning. I was a little late. Was there a strategy or technical reason that provided the device rather than using your smartphone?
Yes, 100% yes. So until now, and statistics might be evolving, but we cannot assume that people have a $600 phone in order to experience our museum. We had a grant to support that, so we were able to offer this for free. So I definitely do encourage to consider the distribution aspect as an accessible checkpoint as well. So we are considering that not only in do they have to download it, do they need to use Bluetooth, do they, but also from the frontline staff. So I think that we're getting into a way better position. Our frontline staff is very, very engaged with us. So yeah, hopefully I answered your question.
And the other reason was because there weren't devices at that time that existed that could read the world the way that the devices that we used did.
And I mean, maybe David could even talk about it, but I know that devices are evolving as well.
Yeah, we have one more question back there real quickly. David?
Besides, I mean, the
device?
I would say if you take the 14 stop,
Sorry,
it's like
we have to.
half a gigabyte.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Thank you.